All right, guys, welcome to episode 27 of the podcast. As you can tell, this is going to be a solo episode. It's just going to be me because Aaron, I guess he got like 3 Twitch followers from the podcast, and now he's too big time to show up for the podcast. So I'm just going to do it by myself. So this episode is going to be kind of like an update plus a story because I know there hasn't been a podcast in maybe a month or 3 weeks, something like that. I know it's been a while. And I'm sure most of you follow my main channel. So you know that I've also taken a break from that channel for 2 weeks. So this is just going to kind of be like a more in-depth story. Because whenever I made that video on my main channel, it's saying that I was taking a break. And I mentioned that I was sick for 5 weeks and I was in the hospital. And I just said, it's no big deal, but I'm going to be back. Tons and tons of people wanted to know more in depth, like what happened, why was I in the hospital, what did I have, all that kind of stuff. So I'm gonna get into that. I'll start off first. What I had, I don't know what I had. I assume it was corona because it was the sickest I've ever been in my life, and I feel like, although I didn't have a whole lot of the symptoms. I didn't have any breathing problems or anything like that. So I guess that was like the main symptom that it had, but I didn't have that. But I mean, I'll get into the story. But whenever I was in the hospital, they pretty much refused to test me for corona. So that's why I don't know what I had, because they told me I was low risk, so they couldn't test me or something. So I don't remember what I was going to say. So the reason that I think that I probably had the coronavirus was, 1, because it was the sickest I've ever been in my life. And 2, I just feel like the chances of me being the sickest I've ever been in my life just happening to be at the same time that we have a pandemic going on, and what I have not be the virus that's causing the pandemic. I feel like those 2 things happening at the same time are very, very slim, because I never get sick to begin. I'm not saying it's not possible, but I never get sick to begin with. And when I am sick, it's like 2, maybe 3 days max. And this was about 5 to 6 weeks of really being sick. And then it was 8 weeks until I was 100% normal. So, I mean, that's pretty significant. So what happened was, so I'll start at week 1. Week 1, day 1, I just felt like, obviously, like I was getting sick. I had like flu-like symptoms pretty much. When I woke up, I had body aches. I had fatigue, very severe fatigue. Like, for the first 5 weeks or so that I was sick, it wasn't just regular fatigue. I had like debilitating fatigue. Like getting up to go from my bed to the bathroom, which is only like 20 feet, was completely exhausting. Like, I would wake up, go to the bathroom, go back to bed, and go back to sleep, because that was all I had. That was all the energy I had. So like, that's that kind of fatigue, not just like I'm a little bit tired. Like something was just sucking all of the life out of me, mentally and physically. Like, physically was bad, but even mentally. So week 1, I had the fatigue, body aches, and for the first like 4 days of week 1, I had like a weird dizziness that wasn't like, usually whenever you think of dizziness, like nauseous, but I wasn't nauseous. I felt like my equilibrium was off. Like, whenever I would walk, if you've ever been on like a cruise ship that's kind of like moving, or a boat that's moving, like that was the feeling I had whenever I would try to walk. Like, I just kind of like felt like everything was off. So that was weird. But that only lasted for like 4 days, for the first 4 days. And then that kind of went away. And when that went away, the body aches kind of went away, probably halfway went away with it. And I'm pretty sure I had a fever for most of it, but I don't own a thermometer, so I don't know 100% if I had a fever. So that was week 1. Miserable, obviously. Week 2 was pretty much the same as week 1. Was pretty much the same as the end of week 1 as far as the fatigue and the body aches, kind of like mild body aches, but the main problem that I had was just fatigue. I just had no energy to do anything. And like, so, and when I say like not enough energy to do anything, I mean like I would lay in bed and even trying to watch a movie, like just the mental energy it takes to comprehend a movie was too much. It was like that was completely exhausting. Like I would put on a movie. Within 10 minutes, I just felt like I was just completely overwhelmed and I just couldn't even handle watching the movie. So like for the whole second week, for most of the second week, I really didn't do anything. Like I would literally just wake up, be in bed, and just sit there. Just sit there. Because that was all I had the energy to do. And that went on for the entire second week. So that's what happened throughout the entire second week. Plus on and off throughout the second week. And not just the second week. This went on and off throughout the first like 4 weeks or so. I had like, I guess it would be like a sensitivity to light is what I had. But like I had this whole thing was weird. Like it was like I had like a million different things wrapped into one. Because this particular thing that happened on and off was like, it wasn't like necessarily a sensitivity to light. It was just like I could be like, walking around the house or like doing, just doing normal stuff. Of course, not very much of it because I was so tired, but just like, sometimes I would go to the living room and try to like watch TV in there or whatever. And like, if I was watching something that was like kind of far away, I was fine. But having any screen up close was like, I don't know how to describe it really. It just like, it made me like nauseous just having like any screen up close. So I couldn't look at a laptop because it would like start making me like really like weird and feel weird and like be dizzy and stuff. If I looked at my phone for too long, like, and I mean, I'm talking like 4 or 5 minutes within that little amount of time, it would like start making me like feel nauseous and weird. I had to like put it down and just kind of like sit there and kind of chill out. So that was weird. And that was like just completely random. Like it wasn't like it went on for 3 or 4 days at a time. Like it wasn't like it went on for like 3 or 4 days and then went away. It was just like say for maybe 5 hours, the first 5 hours of one day, it might be there and then it might go away for the rest. And then maybe the whole next day, there's nothing. And then maybe the day after that, maybe it's like that throughout that entire day. It was just completely random. No like real reason on why it would happen and why it wouldn't happen. So that was kind of weird. So then towards the end of week 2, I started feeling a little bit better. Like not obviously not 100% better, but there was one day like I was, really sick. And then there was one of the days I woke up, I was probably like 50%. And then the next day I was maybe 80%. And then the next day after that, I was maybe like 95. And then the next day after that, I felt completely fine. Of week 3, I had like 4 days in a row where I felt 100% fine. Like I think I filmed a video. I think that was the day that I filmed the last podcast that you guys have seen. I was mowing the grass, doing, cleaning the house, doing everything that I normally did. My energy was like a little bit low, which was fine. It was way higher than it had been the previous 2 weeks, but overall, I felt really, really good. So then I go through those 4 days of feeling great. And then I think it was a Saturday, I woke up. Like Friday, felt great. Everything's good. Saturday, I wake up and I feel pretty much like I did the morning of the very first day that I felt sick. And it was just like that same, just kind of like run down, tired feeling. And it was really weird because like I woke up and I was sitting there in bed and I was thinking, like, am I getting sick again? So then I was thinking, I was like, man, like I thought I was over this. Like, is whatever I have, and did I get over it? And then like I've somehow like reinfected myself. Was it like really not away? And like now it's like coming back for a second wave, or like what's going on? So that Saturday, I felt bad. I pretty much stayed in bed all day, just trying to like not. I didn't stay in bed because like I couldn't, because like I didn't have the energy to do anything else like I did the first couple weeks. But I just chose to like kind of just really chill out and just kind of like vegetate for the day, hoping that like me just resting would make it whatever it is, make it go away faster. So that way maybe within like a couple days I can be back to where I was. That didn't work. So I kind of just, vegetated for that day, chilled out. And then that was Saturday. Then Sunday, I woke up, felt worse than I did Saturday. So I knew like, okay, there's something going on here. Like something's wrong. So all day Sunday, didn't do anything. Monday, I woke up and I felt better than Saturday, or I felt better than Sunday on Monday. So then I, kind of still, took it easy that day. And throughout that whole day, I woke up feeling kind of, whatever. And then by the end of that day, I felt pretty much completely normal. So I figured, okay, whatever this is, I was sick for the 2 weeks, had the little break where I was good. And then, maybe like sick a little bit again. So I was thinking like, maybe I had whatever for these first 2 weeks. And then maybe I had a 100 million different scenarios running through my head, but I was thinking, maybe I got sick for the first 2 weeks and then got over it. And then maybe I like had just a little bit of a cold or something for these last 3 days because my immune system was suppressed from fighting whatever I was fighting for 2 weeks or whatever. So that's the mindset that I had. So when I woke up, so by the end of like Monday, I felt pretty good. Tuesday, I was supposed to go back to work because I'd been off, the previous 3 weeks because of being sick. So Tuesday, I'm supposed to go back to work. Tuesday, I wake up and I don't feel nearly as good as I did that night before whenever I went to bed, but I don't feel like horrible. I probably feel about 80%. And since the day before, I had felt, bad in the morning and then gradually got better throughout the day. Whenever I woke up on Tuesday to go to work, I figured, I was like, all right, I kind of feel like garbage right now, but if today's like yesterday, then gradually throughout the day, I should feel better. So I'm just going to, go ahead, go to work, tough it out for the first, couple hours. Then I should feel good enough and, be fine. That's not what happened. So I go to work. I'm there. I drive to work. I walk into the building. I go into the office and I'm sitting down on a bar stool talking to the people in the office. And I'm not in there probably not even 10 minutes or so. I'm sitting there just like I am now. I'm just sitting down. I'm just talking. And we're just sitting there talking. And I feel kind of weird, but like, I've been feeling bad for 3 weeks. So I didn't think much of it. So I'm sitting there and we're talking. And then like all of a sudden I start feeling like hot. Like I feel like I had a jacket on because it was cold outside. But like I just started feeling like really hot. And I was like, oh man. So I take my jacket off, set it to the side. And then like I'm still like I'm getting like feeling hotter. And this is like in a very short amount of time. This happens maybe in like within like a 2-minute span, maybe. So I take the jacket off. I'm still feeling hot. Like I'm almost starting to sweat from being so hot. And then like I'm still talking to them, but as I'm talking to them, I start to kind of notice that like everything around me is kind of getting blurry. And I'm not like, it's just weird. Like I'm sitting there and I'm starting to notice like everything's kind of getting blurry. And I start feeling kind of lightheaded. So then I say to them out loud, I'm like, hey, I'm getting lightheaded. So then pretty much about the time I say that, everything gets like it was like kind of blurry. Everything gets really blurry, and then it starts looking like I looks like I'm looking down a tunnel, and the peripheral vision is like starting to get like kind of close in, and I'm like I said, I feel like I'm looking down two different tunnels, and everything is just slowly closing in, and then it like just slowly closes into black, and then I wake up on the ground. So I passed out, and so I'm so I was sitting there talking to them. I pass out. I fall off the bar stool, fall on the ground. Pretty much once I hit the ground, I guess I come back or whatever. So I'm waking up, and I don't know if you guys have ever passed out before, you know that whenever you're like waking back up, it's almost like you're watching a TV that's on mute, because, or at least for me it is, because I've only passed out twice, but this has happened both times. Whenever you're like waking up, you open your eyes and you can see everything, but it takes like maybe 10 seconds or so for like your ears to turn back on. So like whenever I'm waking up, there's like all these people looking at me and they're talking to me, but I can't hear anything they're saying because I just hear silence. So I eventually, get, not wake up, but like I, get back to normal, and I realize, and I'm, processing everything like, okay, I just passed out, whatever. So they call the hospital or the ambulance. The ambulance comes. They check my blood sugar. That was fine. They checked my blood pressure. That was fine. And then they hooked me to some machine. I don't even know what it was. And it was almost like it might have been an EKG. It was like, it had all the pads that they stick all over your chest like an EKG does. And they stuck all those to me, and they were like looking at it, and they said, I don't remember exactly what they said. Whatever they said they saw, they said it was like consistent with someone that's dehydrated, which I shouldn't have been dehydrated, but I most definitely could have been. So they tell me, they're like, well, I mean, we can take you to the hospital or we cannot. But then they were telling me like, well, if we don't take you to the hospital and then we leave and then you pass out again, then we're definitely taking you to the hospital, even if you don't want to. So I decided, I was like, and just to preface this, before this, I hadn't been to a doctor in like probably 10 years. So like there could have been anything wrong with me, because like I as far as I know, there's nothing wrong with me. Like I don't take any medications. I've never had anything weird happen. The only time I've ever been to the hospital is like for stitches. So like up until this point, I've never had any medical problems and everything has been fine. But I also hadn't been to like any regular checkups or like anything like that. So I'm thinking, okay, well, obviously there's something wrong. I've been sick for like 2 weeks with like a little 4-day break in there. And then now I'm sick again. And then now I'm going unconscious while I'm just sitting down doing nothing. So, there has to be something wrong with me. So I go in the ambulance. They take me to the hospital. I get to the hospital, and if you've ever been to the ER is just like, even though this is right in the middle of the whole corona thing, the ER is just like a madhouse. There was only like maybe 4 people in there, like me and 4 other people. And there was like, probably 150 seats. So it was relatively empty, but there was some lady that came in that I'm sure she was probably on some type of drugs or something. She gave some ambulance wheeled her in. And so I got to listen to her scream for like 2 hours because there was like something wrong with her leg. And like the doctor would try to touch her leg, and then she'd be like, oh no, don't touch it. And she'd start screaming. And then he would tell her like, I have to touch your leg to look at it. And then she'd start screaming, and they went back and forth for like 2 hours. So that was awesome. Got to listen to that for 2 hours. So eventually they take me back there, whatever. When they take me back, they do an EKG, and they say they do the EKG. That's fine. They ended up doing 12 pages total of blood work, and everything was fine. The only thing they told me that my white blood cell count was just a little bit high, which from being sick. So then they do what's called an orthostatic blood pressure test, where I would lay down, and then they would check my blood pressure. I think I laid down, they checked it, sit up, they checked it, stand up, they checked it. And then I think they made me walk around the room and then stand still and they would check it. They said all that was fine. So then of course they asked me a bunch of questions or whatever. And then my whatever blood work they did at the time, because they did, like I said, they did 12 pages overall, 12 pages worth of blood work overall, but they did it all in like stages. So I guess, so whatever the first things were they checked, that first round of blood work came back and all that was good. So I'm just kind of just chilling in the ER, waiting to see what they're going to do or whatever. So they tell me that they tell me everything that they've done. And then they tell me that they want to do a chest x-ray, which I got the chest x-ray. They looked at that. They said that was fine. So then they said, since everything that they had checked up until then was fine, they wanted to do an echo, which is just like, it's pretty much just an ultrasound of your heart. So that way they can see like the chambers of your heart and the valves, and they can like see everything work or whatever. So they tell me they want to do that. So I'm like, okay, whatever. So they tell me that. And then of course, and then this is where it got, like, up until this point, I wasn't really like that worried. I was just kind of there, just going through the motions, just because I knew that, that's what I needed to do at the time. So I was just kind of, just there going through the motions, whatever. So obviously I was in the ER. So the ER was set up to, there was like 5, like, I guess like rooms, but there was just like beds with, just curtains in between them. And then the one that I was in was at the end, right beside, I guess like little office or whatever that the nurses and doctors were standing in or whatever. So I'm sitting there I'm laying there on the bed, and I can hear the doctor talking to somebody on the phone. This is where it gets stressful. So I can hear her talking on the phone, and I'm like half listening to what she says, but then I hear her say my name. So I'm like, oh, okay. Oh, she's talking about me. So I'm sitting there and I'm listening like real close, and I hear her telling whoever she's on the phone with, I'm assuming like another doctor or whatever. So she's telling whoever she's on the phone with, like, all the tests that they've done, and like every, all my answers to the questions they asked and all that kind of stuff. I'm sitting there and I'm listening, and I hear her say, she says, I really think it's a left ventricle. And then she said some other word that I don't remember what it was. But she said left ventricle, whatever is what she said. So that's in my mind. I hear her say that, and I'm like, so that's what she thinks that I have. Okay. Left ventricle something. So I just keep that in my mind. So they come back, they tell me, okay, well, it's kind of late in the day. We can't do the echo now, but we can do it in the morning. So we're going to have to admit you overnight, and then we'll do the test in the morning. So I'm like, all right, whatever. Everything's great. They take me to it. They put me on an IV, which the woman had to dig from my veins. She had to stick me like 6 different times just to get the IV in, which that was so much fun. I can't even express. So they put me on an IV, and then they admit me, put me in a room. I'm sitting in the room, and this isn't what I should have done, but I did it anyway. I got on Google, and I remembered what she said, how she said left ventricle, whatever. So I type in Google left ventricle, and then 5, 6 options pop up or whatever. Whichever one it was, I clicked on that one. I click on it, and I'm looking, and I see that whatever it was, it's whenever your left ventricle, which is the main chamber of your heart, whenever the walls of your left ventricle thicken or get thick or whatever, for whatever reason they get thick, so your heart can't pump as good. So of course I end up down this rabbit hole of Google, and I end up finding out. So everything ends up coming back to like the left ventricle, whatever is like the first, it's the first symptom to heart failure. So that's awesome. So I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, great. Then this is like when it gets like really stressful. So I'm thinking, awesome. This is like the first step to heart failure. This is the end. I'm dead. That's all I can think is like, I'm just sitting there and I'm like, great. This is the end. This is the end. 26 and I'm dead. So of course, I was sure I was being over dramatic, but that's what I was thinking. So I saw that it said, the first symptom to heart failure or whatever. So I start So then I, Google, I'm like, okay, well, what are the symptoms of heart failure? So I Google, here I am, 26, Googling the symptoms to heart failure. And one of the symptoms I see was loss of consciousness. So I'm like, all right, well, yeah, I had that one. That's how I ended up in this whole thing. So then I see, and this is where it got really stressful for me. So then, like, the next thing I see is one of the symptoms of heart failure is that your feet swell. So I'm thinking, feet swelling? My feet don't swell. So, but as I'm sitting here, I'm like, literally, as I'm reading that a symptom of heart failure is your feet swelling, as I'm reading this, the nurse walks into my room and to tell me that she needs to check my feet for swelling. So here I am sitting here literally reading the symptoms of heart failure. And she comes in here to check me for one of the symptoms of heart failure. And like, it was like this whole moment where I'm just like sitting there, and it was like this realization. I was like, I'm dead. Like, this is it. Like, this is like, they're literally checking me for heart failure. So this is the end. And I start like, I didn't say anything, but like in my head, I'm like, I'm losing my mind. I'm stressed out to the max. So then she checks my feet or whatever. And of course they weren't swollen. They were, normal. And even though they weren't swollen, for whatever reason, just that moment stuck with me. And it stressed, like, for the rest of the time I was in the hospital, the only thing I could think, like, that was the only thought that I was thinking was like, this is the end. Like, this, like, I'm dead. And I mean, looking back now, I know that was probably a little bit over dramatic, but that was it. That was the only thought just constantly running through my mind was like, there is something wrong with me. I'm dead. Like, there's something wrong with me. This is the end. So I'm just like running through my head, just like, just all these crazy thoughts. And I didn't sleep at all that night. I should have put my phone down. That's what I should have done. And I probably could have slept. But I ended up on Google, and I'm looking, for hours. I'm like looking up symptoms of heart failure. And then, okay, so if you have this symptom and this symptom, what does this mean? And then, how long can you live with heart failure? And like, how do you treat heart failure? Can you reverse heart failure? Like, I'm just like going down this rabbit hole of heart failure, just going on and on and on. And of course, whenever you're on Google and you're looking up symptoms of any type of sickness, everything you can go on WebMD and you could type in that you have a pain in your finger. And if you go down the rabbit hole far enough, you'll end up that your finger pain means that you're dying. So that was pretty much what everything that I searched ended up coming around to, was like, everything circled back to, well, you're dying. So I'm just laying there, and I'm just like, well, it was good while it lasted. It was a good 26 years, but I guess this is the end. So I was just like, losing my mind, stressed out. So I slept maybe probably like an hour while I was in the hospital, if that. So I'm pretty much laying there. I fall asleep for maybe like an hour, and then they come in at I fell asleep probably about 3, and like somewhere around 4, they came in to get more blood for another test or whatever. So they come in and get blood. And after they got done digging around my arm and getting blood, there was no chance of going back to sleep, because I wasn't really tired to begin with. And then after getting stabbed like 6 times to get blood, and of course thinking I'm about to die, there's no chance of getting any sleep. So after that, so I get up in the morning, or not get up, I was already up, and they bring me breakfast, which was actually like a big stress reliever. Like, just eating breakfast for some reason just was like, it was like one of the few things that like kind of like made me happy in that moment. I was like, oh, okay. And because it was bacon and eggs and a biscuit, and I was like, oh, okay, this is actually pretty good. So maybe, I might be dying, but at least I'm kind of enjoying myself right now while I'm eating breakfast. So I ate breakfast or whatever, and I was in a little bit of a better mood after I ate breakfast for whatever reason. I was just kind of just thinking. I started thinking more like, I guess, like reasonably, like, maybe there's nothing wrong. And I was, kind of trying to, be in a little bit better mood. So they probably around, so I just kind of, laid there until probably noon. And then noon, they send a guy in. He comes in, folds my bed up or whatever and rolls me down the hallway. And he rolls me down to the place where they're going to do the echo. So they roll me down there. They roll me in the room, and the lady, she rubs the gel all over my chest, and she has like the little wand, and she's like, look, like the way this was set up was like I'm facing straight, laying in the bed, and she's facing the opposite direction of me, and she's looking at, and the monitor that she's looking at is also the opposite direction of me. So I can't see. So keep in mind, I can't see what's on the monitor, but I can see her. I can see her body language is what I can see. So I'm laying there. She's doing the scan. She like starts doing this. She's, we're just kind of like, chit chatting back and forth, and she's rubbing the gel on me or whatever. And she like actually starts doing the scan, and she's like looking for a certain spot or whatever. And she like I guess she finds whatever spot she's looking for, and she's like holding the thing there. And whenever she's holding it there, I look over and I see her like looking at the monitor, but she's like doing this. Like she's like opening her eyes real big, and she's like getting real close to the monitor and like looking like she just looks like very concerned. And she's like doing like clicking buttons and just like looks like something's really wrong. And she holds it there for like maybe like 4 or 5 minutes while she's like looking at something. And then she like turns like the sound on, and I can like hear my heart beating like through the speakers, which I mean, I don't know what the sound means. I don't know if it's a good noise or a bad noise, but it sounds like, but whenever I hear it, it sounds scary to me. It sounds like something's wrong, which, ended up not being the case. But so I hear all that, and then I'm asking her, during this whole thing probably took probably like 30 minutes for her to do like because she had to like look at all the different parts or whatever. So she looks at it all, and like, it was like, each new place that she went to on my chest that she was like looking into, each new place was like a new like weird look, and like she just like kept looking concerned. And throughout this whole thing, I probably asked her, and this was really stressing me out by this point, because throughout the whole thing, I probably asked her 10 times at least, like, what do you see? Is there something wrong? Do you like just like trying to get some type of like confirmation that I'm not dying? Like I was just looking for anything, and she wouldn't give me nothing. The only thing that she would say is she would be sitting there, and she would just like, whenever I would talk to her like this like concerned like look that she'd have on her face just kind of like went away. And then she was just kind of like, she was like typing or whatever, and she'd just be like, well, I'm not allowed to give you any results. That's all she would say. So I'm just laying there like, oh, great. She looks concerned and she can't give me results. So awesome. So then, about 2 or 3 minutes later, she'd look concerned again. I'd ask her, hey, you see anything wrong? Can't give you any results. And she just kept doing that. Just kept telling me that over and over and over. And after like the 10th time, I was like, man, all right, well, I really am dying. She's not like, cause she wasn't giving me like just like a little like, you're going to be all right. Or just like, just anything would have just like took the edge off, but she didn't give me nothing. So she gets done or whatever. They push me back to my room, and like I'm just replaying what just happened. I'm just like replaying that in my mind over like these like weird looks she's giving. Like I'm just replaying that in my mind over and over and over. I'm like, well, I was all the stuff I was reading on Google and all that stuff. I'm like, well, I guess this really is the end. This lady looked like she was very concerned, and she wouldn't give me anything or whatever. So we get done probably about 1 or so. I end up back in my room, something like that. So then I don't get any results until like probably 7 o'clock, something like that. So that whole time I'm literally just sitting in my room, just like, again, just like I was the night before, just stressing out like, okay, what's going to happen? What are they going to do? I'm thinking like, I'm just sitting there thinking like, great, they're probably not even going to let me go home. They're probably going to have to do some type of surgery and like all this stuff. And I just like, my mind's just running circles a million miles an hour, just thinking of all these different things that could be happening. And like, nobody will tell me anything. And then they also, I think after I got the echo was whenever I asked them if they were going to test me for corona, then they were like, pretty much, no, you're low risk. You're not having problems breathing, so we're not going to test you. So that was like another like slap in the face, like, oh, great. Now I'm definitely never going to know what's happening. So I'm just kind of sitting there and I don't even think I was watching TV. I'm just basically just stressing out and drinking water is all I did. And I'm just sitting there, and then like I just hear somebody whistling. I'm thinking, like, okay, someone's whistling. And the cardiologist just walks in my room, and he was the one that was whistling. He's just, happy as can be. He walks in the room and he's like, well, got all your results. Everything's fine. And we're going to send you home. So I'm just laying there. I'm just like shocked. I'm just like, okay, so there's nothing wrong. He's like, no, everything's good. And I'm like, okay. So there's nothing wrong with my heart. I don't have any heart problems. I'm not dying. Like I'm not going to have a heart attack. Like nothing's going on. I'm all good. And he's like, yep, you're completely fine. So I was like, okay, so what, so why did why do you think I passed out? And he goes, well, which just was kind of unsettling to hear, but he goes, well, sometimes that happens. And I was like, okay, so just sometimes that happens. Like, sometimes you just pass out. And he's like, yeah, we can't really find anything. So yeah, sometimes that happens. And then he just left. And that was it. So then, the nurses come in and like an hour later or so, and they start pulling out my IV and taking all the tape off me and all that kind of stuff. And then they send me home. And I remember I felt real, like on top of being stressed out, I felt, of course I still had the fatigue, but I felt so bad while I was in there. Like I felt worse than I did whenever I was sick for the first 2 weeks before that. Like while I was in, like I just felt, like I said, just so bad, like just run down. And of course I didn't sleep, so that didn't help. I felt horrible. But whenever he walked in there and he goes, everything's good. Like you're fine. For whatever reason, it was like someone just like waved a magic wand and I felt like $1,000,000. I didn't feel tired anymore. I didn't feel sick anymore. I felt completely fine. I felt like all this stress and anxiety and all this stuff had just been like taken away and everything was good. So then I get dressed or whatever. And I was walking to my car to drive home. And so I'm walking out of the hospital. It's probably like 8:00 at night. It was probably like 75 degrees. There was a nice breeze. I felt amazing. So I get in the car, I drive home, everything's good. Rest of that day, I feel fine. And I figure, okay, maybe this is over. Maybe I'm not sick anymore. Wasn't the case. So after the high of, realizing I'm not dying and like everything's fine. After that kind of wore off, went to bed, woke up the next day, same thing. Just felt just exhausted, just mentally and physically. But this time, more mentally than physically. Like I had most, like not most, I probably had 80% of my physical energy back, but I was still just mentally drained. Just just no desire to do anything. I spent like a couple of days trying to like plan videos. I just couldn't. I couldn't come up with titles for video. I couldn't come up with like ideas for videos. I had some videos that like I already had, like a general idea of what I wanted to do, but I normally, whenever I come up with a video, I come up with like the general idea and then I write that down somewhere. And then whenever it comes time for me to, shoot that video, like the day before or whatever, I'll kind of expand on it and kind of figure out, exactly what I want the video to be. But I couldn't even do that. It was like same thing as before, just mentally, just not even there, just drained, couldn't think, couldn't do anything. So I was just like I thought at that point, I thought there was like something wrong with me, like something else was wrong with me because like I didn't feel all that bad. Yeah, I felt a little bit tired, but like just mentally, I just felt like there was just nothing going on. Like I don't even know I've never even felt that way before. Like I just felt just empty. And I would try to watch a TV show, watch videos or whatever, and there was just nothing. It was like I was just processing information, but I wasn't like there was no thoughts. Like it was very strange. I've never felt that way before. But so that went on that went on up until today. It's the 8th today. That went on until like last week. So it was like from this whole experience from beginning to end was roughly like 8 weeks, because the last I was like sick for 6, give or take. And then the and then I went back to work. And then the last 2 weeks that I was at work, I was like physically, I had probably 90% of my 90 to 95% of my energy back physically, but just mentally, I just was just not there and just felt weird and off. And that went on, like I said, that went on until like last week. And then up until last week, never felt like 100% exactly the way I felt before I got sick. And then of course now I feel fine, but now I truly feel 100%. So whether this was like the coronavirus or whatever this was, it was the worst thing that it was it was the worst thing I've ever been through in my life. I'm pretty sure. Like it was definitely the worst sickness I've ever been through in my life. It was horrible. I've never been through something that had such debilitating fatigue. Like I've never had something put me down for this long ever. And that's why I ended up on my main channel taking that 2-week break, was because I was just drained. I had nothing to like, I had no like energy to give to shoot a video. Like it was just nothing. Like I had no videos planned. I had nothing. I was just like, the way I usually have my videos is I have a whole wall with post-it notes. Every idea that I come up with, I write it down on a post-it note, I stick it to the wall. That way, every time I'm in my office at my computer, not in here, but in my office, I can look at that wall. I can see all of the ideas that I have. And then whatever video I whether I have the materials or whatever it is I'm waiting for to shoot that video, once I decide I'm going to shoot that video, I take the post-it note off, stick it to the desk, and I get a sheet of paper, and then I expand on that video, figure out everything that I'm going to do. But I couldn't do that. Like I would have these great ideas on the wall, and I'd like pull the post-it note off, stick it to the thing. I'd sit there with a pen, and I'm like, I have nothing. Like I don't even know like how to even begin doing this. And then I had one video that I already had planned out. I went out to the garage, I turned on the camera, and I literally just stared at the camera for like 3 minutes. And I was like, I don't even know what to say. Like I that's all I know how to say. That's all I know how to describe it as, is I just had absolutely nothing. I was just completely blank. So that's why I ended up taking the 2-week break. And luckily everything is fine now, and I'm back on track. And I'm back probably, I think I have 3 videos already filmed. So everything is back on track, A-okay. So for those of you that wanted to hear it, that is the expanded version of everything that was going on and why I took that 2-week break and everything that I went through while I was sick for that time. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.